Hey everyone, Cell here. Transfigured Gems Batch 3. I have had a precursory glance at them this time. Well, okay, not really glance. I've read them all and formulated opinions about them, so I'll go over them hopefully fairly quickly here and then circle back to some of the more interesting ones, in my opinion. So, Purifying Flame of Revelations focuses more on the shockwave damage than the initial hit, with the shockwave dealing 110% more damage as opposed to less damage in the base gem. Pyroclast Mine of Sabotage focuses more on the aura effect of the flat fire damage. If I remember correctly, it's about double the maximum fire damage, which is absolutely nuts. If you have enough of these things, it's obviously very hard to do so, but it's a sliding scale of being able to put down as many mines as you can, of course. But if you have the full set, 1249 to 1873 is a ridiculous amount of damage. So, yeah, keep that in mind. You might see people throwing this in their March of the Legion at some point. Rage Vortex of Berserking. This is one of the aforementioned interesting ones I'll get to in a moment here. Instead of doing the normal Rage Vortex stuff, it does not gain a damage bonus based on the sacrifice rage. If you have at least 10 rage, create a rage storm attached to you that repeatedly deals attack damage to enemies inside based on your attack speed. Now, there is very little reason to believe this won't work with exertions. So what that means is when you exert a rage vortex that spawns the rage storm should have the exertion for the full duration. More on that later. Ray Spectre of Transience. This is the replacement for the old Jewel. Turns specters into a temporary version with a 1000% increased crit chance. So 30-second duration. I think that's the same as before, maybe a little better, actually. Ray Zombie of Slamming. So they took out the slam of the original zombie attacks. They just do their basic attack now. Ray Zombie of Slamming does the basic attack and the slam attack with better recovery rate by the looks of it. Not really sure what quality is doing here. Maybe both cooldown recovery and AoE at like 0.5% apiece. Ray Zombie of Falling. This is one we've seen. Now we know what the quality is, which is 15% chance to deal double damage. 15% more damage from quality seems to be about what they have gone for, so seems pretty good. 0.75 second cast time, a little better than normal Ray Zombie, I believe, and of this one as well, because it tends to be a pretty slow spell. 0.75 is still kind of slow, but not extremely hindering, I don't think. Scorching Ray of Immolation. This one forgoes the exposure for better damage on the debuff. So 1893.9 base fire damage per second, 8 stages, max of 14% more damage per stage. Unclear what quality is doing here. It might be the 20 quality might be an effective 4% damage being added. But anyways, this means at max stages you'll be dealing about 4,000 fire damage per second, which I think is pretty good, pretty competitive with other skills, and will possibly have you wanting to use this, I think. Shattering Steel of Ammunition. This is bringing back the steel skill, kind of old situation they had going on, with the Call of Steel skill. So this is more like what the old one used to be like. Again, they took out some more complex functionality of the base gem and put it into a Transfigured gem. Shield Crush of the Chieftain. This one scales flat fire damage based on armor, rather than physical damage based on armor and evasion. So I think this is pretty interesting. even a fairly basic armor shield can get up to an effective 1000, 1100 elemental DPS. So, of course, physical scaling is nice because you can do physical gained as other elements and such, but I think this one might be good enough to consider looking into. Siege Ballista of Splintering. Siege Ballista, I believe, is the one that pierces. Instead, this one forks. And it has projectiles, can fork one additional time. I don't know if that means they fork once or they fork twice. Or if they fork once but can fork twice. Either way, looks like quality here might be that projectiles have a 40% chance for an additional projectile when forking. This one's interesting. I think the two fork situation has interesting clear implications, but beyond that, it looks like a pretty middle of the road kind of skill. Smite of Divine Judgment. So this one we did see teased earlier, and I'm sure other people have ascertained this based on the lack of effect in the teaser for the Transfigured Animate Guardian. Remember that the Transfigured Animate Guardian we saw before uses Smite of Divine Judgment. So it does not cast an aura. Instead, lightning strikes 3 targets within 7 meters, so it seems more like an AoE primary damaging skill sort of used for Smite rather than the aura boosting. So that's interesting and good to know for the Animate Guardian. Soul Rend of Reaping. This one is more of a hit-based take on Soul Rend, so gives up the damage over time portion entirely for higher base damage. 7% crit, 400% damage effectiveness. Pretty nice stuff all around. Soul Rend of the Spiral is more like the original Soul Rend, except this does, I believe, a helix effect, like a spectral helix effect on the skill. So it fires 5 base projectiles instead of the 1. In a spiral kind of effect, still has the damage over time and hit portion, except it does not have the built-in energy shield leech. Spark of the Nova. This one is higher damage spark, fires a lot of projectiles, and fires them in a circle. One thing to note about both of these sparks is that they move randomly until they hit an enemy or expire. So you can't do pierce shenanigans where you're flooding the screen with sparks and getting a bunch of duration and projectile speed, because they'll disappear as soon as they hit an enemy. Spark of Unpredictability. Same deal. Like I said before, they will expire when they hit an enemy or run out of duration. Launches unpredictable sparks with that move randomly. Some of the wording on these skill gems is not up to snuff, by the way. Regardless, what they're getting at is they have variable speed and distance on each projectile by the sound of it. And this has less damage than the previous one and less projectiles as well. So, I don't know, that one seems kind of the weirdest one to me. I could see this and I could see the base spark, but the unpredictability, I don't know, I guess I'm not really feeling it. Spectral Shield Throw of Shattering. This one is similar to the Shield Crush we just saw, but for cold damage, scaling based on evasion. So, cold damage kind of affiliated with dexterity in the same way that fire damage is affiliated with strength. So pretty interesting here with the shield throw scaling cold damage. I think I'm less interested in this one because I'm not as into the theme, I guess, but it remains an option. We'll have to see how good it is, and we'll have to see if there are any breakpoints for either of these beyond level 20 that scale up the damage per defense. Split Arrow of Splitting. Another splitting skill. This one is hilarious though because it's split arrow and it's splitting more. Modifiers to the number of projectiles instead apply to the number of targets projectiles split towards. Projectiles split towards 8 targets. Projectiles can split without hitting a target. So you can fire into a wall or something and still get the split. This one, I feel like will have to be felt out because it's one of those things that seems bad to me just thinking about it, but potentially has some strong uses. Splitting steel of ammunition. I believe this one is same as the other one of ammunition. Yep. Again, bringing back the old Call of Steel functionality. I believe anyways. I kind of glossed over some of these because I'm not as interested, but there it is for people that wanted to continue playing that playstyle, I guess. Summon Chaos Golem of the Maelstrom. Summons a Chaos Golem. The Chaos Golem casts a powerful damage over time Chaos Aura that withers enemies in addition to its melee attack. So it does not give the normal Golem buff. Has a bit of a shorter cooldown, I believe. I think the Golems all have 8-second cooldowns. Minions have 20% chance to inflict withered on hit. From quality, no doubt. It'll be nice to see the damage numbers on this because this could be an interesting supporting minion for various builds. Or if it's strong enough to be its own thing, then that could happen as well. I'm curious to see where this one goes, but without numbers, it's hard to weigh in on it. Summon Flame Golem of the Meteor. I didn't say this last time, I don't think, but all of these Golem gems give up their buff in order to do something different. So, Flame Golem of the Meteor summons a Flame Golem. When summoned, the Flame Golem attacks by falling from the sky, dealing fire damage in an area and leaving burning ground around the impact. I believe you can see this in some enemies already. I think there are some enemies that do this in the game right now. And it's pretty cool to have that as a skill. So, intriguing with this one. Again, we'll have to see on the damage numbers and practicality of it. Like, how much damage does the impact do? Sort of deal. And it's sourced from the minion by the sound of it. Good thing here, though, is if you want to spam that sort of cool effect, the cooldown time is only 2 seconds, so significantly shorter than other minions, or other golem skills. Summon Ice Golem of Hordes. The Ice Golem can use an Icy Barrage spell and a Chilling Spinning attack in addition to its melee attack, with 2 more max summoned golems than the base gem, which I feel like is probably the main reason you're going to be using this. Note they have down here, we've shown Summon Ice Golem of Hordes. All Summon Golem gems will also have this variant to make up for the loss of Summon Golems on Jewels. So, gaining +2 while dropping the stat on the Anima Stone. So, kind of opens that playstyle up a little bit. I don't know how important Anima Stone will continue to be, but at the very least, you can still have the appropriate number of minions going. Here's one I was personally anticipating, and I should have made a comment of somewhere because I was you'll have to take my word for it, I was out 100% expecting pretty much this exact skill, and they kind of did hint at it by saying people that like minion instability will still have an SRS gem. And this one, instead of 20 max Raging Spirits, you have a max of 6. Now, the quality could be one of those. Remains unclear. The quality could also be the crit multi, I guess. That's probably more likely, actually. But, yeah, here we go. Presumably, they still have the same base damage as a normal Raging Spirit. But they have 88% more max life, and their hits are always critical strikes. And they're presumably massive, as the name implies. So I think that's going to be hilarious. Regardless, max of 6 spirits, again, 88% more life. I don't know how much of a difference that is between before. I don't remember if they had any life modifiers or not. But it sounds like minion instability will have a solid use for this, especially with some potential help from the new curse from the Warlock Affliction tree. Curious to see how that plays out. But yeah, this gem seems really fun, especially if the Raging Spirits are hilariously sized. Next, we have Summon Reaper of Revenants, which gives you more max Summon Reapers. Instead of 1, now you're running around with 3. They deal less damage. I don't remember if the normal gem has that line. And they still discourage you from having other minions, so they will eat your other minions still, and they prevent your other minions from being as good when they're alive, which usually isn't for long, as I understand it. Next one is Summon Reaper of Eviscerating. This one has more of a bleed focus. I don't remember if the other one has bleed bonuses. Okay, never mind. I had to switch back and forth a few times, but I see the difference here now. The normal Reaper will use various attacks while it follows you. This one summons a Reaper which passively follows you without attacking anything. They both have the functionality of whenever you use a skill, it will dash towards the targeted location and use an attack. Both of the gems have that, but this one is more of a passive role of following you along and attacking when you do rather than doing its own thing and then switching to attack what you do. Not necessarily attack, but use a skill towards. We also have skills for Summon Skeletons of Archers and Mages. So, good to have those on actual skill gems. I think that's a pretty solid thing. Pretty basic, but again, nice to have old options as well. Thunder of Earthbreaking. This is essentially the old Sunder. So, again, anybody that misses the old playstyle will now have the old Sunder again as an option. Void Sphere of Rending. I don't know how the radius compares on the base gem compared to this one, but this one notably does not have a cooldown and has shorter duration. So if you're ever looking for a spammable Void Sphere, I guess here it is. Probably more intended for a self-cast damaging type of role than anything, I would imagine. Volcanic Fissure of Snaking. So this one doesn't release projectiles anymore. Instead, it will go to the targeted location. Instead of spitting up projectiles, will deal an area damage hit before sort of piercing and moving on to another enemy to cause further eruptions. Fissures erupt 3 additional times, which presumably means they erupt 4 times in total. This seems more clear-oriented than the base Volcanic Fissure. Vortex of Projection. Again, some old functionality here of being able to target Frostbolts. So we'll see if that playstyle makes a comeback between either this or the Ice Nova. Then we have Wild Strike of Extremes. Notice here, this is so far unique in what I've noticed. Cost, 28 mana, 28 life, and 28 energy shield. You need all 3 of those things, or you will not be able to cast this skill. So, good to note there. Well, not necessarily, I guess. If you're using Eldritch Battery, then you need life. You need 28 life and 56 energy shield, I would assume. But the gist of it is, you can't cast it without energy shield. Your melee weapon strikes enemies, converting physical damage to a random element. Then it'll do random stuff based on that element. Not random, but you know what I mean. Big thing here, bottom line. Hits treat enemy monster elemental resistance values as inverted. So the Rakiata's effect, but on Wild Strike. Can use it with whatever melee weapon you want. Again, you have to make sure you have energy shield to use it. This one seems very fun, and I'm curious about the ways people will take advantage of the inversion on a build less limited than using a two-handed sword. Now, my personal favorites of this batch, I already kind of hinted at, are definitely going to be Rage Vortex of Berserking, Summon Raging Spirit of Enormity, and Wild Strike of Extremes. Now, I wanted to talk about one in particular. I guess the SRS of Enormity kind of has an obvious use case in Dominion instability stuff, which is fine, but I think it also has some potential for more crit-oriented SRS builds, because if you're building around crit, and you can get up to a certain level of crit multi, then you can easily warrant only having 6 Raging Spirits, in my opinion anyways. And especially because that may allow you to drop Unleash entirely. So, something to consider. They don't have a bigger damage multiplier or anything inherently. It's just from the crits that's coming into effect. But if you can scale up crit multi well enough, then it may be a thing. Now, I wanted to talk about Rage Vortex of Berserking a bit, because I think there are a couple things people will be overlooking. So, first of all, we're going to become a Berserker over here and check out Warbringer. Warbringer says, Warcries grant 10 rage per 5 power if you have less than 25 rage. Warcries sacrifice 10 rage if you have at least 25 rage. Exerted attacks deal 50% more attack damage if a Warcry sacrificed rage recently. If we take a look at Red Blade Banner, I can read, it says, Warcries have infinite power. What that means is when you have a Red Blade Banner equipped as a Berserker with Warbringer, when you use a Warcry with less than 25 rage, you will go up to your max rage immediately. So, step 1, use Intimidating Cry. Enduring Cry. Any Warcry really, but might as well be Enduring Cry. Now you're at max rage. Step 2, use Intimidating Cry. Exerts the next 2 melee attacks you perform. Exerted attacks deal double damage. And exerted attacks deal 50% more damage, because you've sacrificed rage by using a Warcry recently, because you were at above 25 rage when you used Intimidating Cry. Now, based on how it's worded, when you use Rage Vortex of Berserking, it will not do the normal attack. And I guess even if it does, it's kind of irrelevant so long as you have enough exertions. The Rage Storm around you should count as an exerted attack. The way Rage Vortex currently works is the whole duration of the skill gets the exertion bonuses. And it lasts 3 seconds baseline. Now, what if, because you're stacking so much rage, you can have 15, 20-second rage storms? And this is analogous to Blade Vortex, where you're just kind of like moving around. You don't need to attack or do anything else to keep the rage storm going. All you need to do is make sure you have enough rage. How do you do that? Well, if you fall below 25 rage, and you press another Warcry, you're going to go back up to full instantly. It's about the timing. Rage Storm, or Rage Vortex of Berserking, does have the Berserk effect of it continuously increasing its usage, so that's going to be a potential hindrance there in terms of the timing, but there are other ways to sustain rage. We've seen the Cleave effect, the Raging Cleave, 2 rage per hit. If you're going to hit a lot in single target or something, can keep Rage Storm up for a while during that. You're already a Berserker, so why not use Crave the Slaughter? You're going to get 1 rage on hit with attacks, no more than every 0.3 seconds. Your attack rate is going to be so high with the Rage Storm, this should basically cap you out at the 3-ish rage per second. And if you're really that worried about it, you can also use the Rage Support. Okay, it's just called Rage, I guess. Rage Support Gem. Support skills gain 1 rage on hit, no more than once every 0.4 seconds. Same deal. You should be able to get 2 rage per second with this. Combine it with Berserker, another 5 rage per second. Can keep you going for quite a while. You could also throw on Combs, even though it's nerfed. Comb Spirit, that is. I don't really think that's necessary. And then on top of that, you can do some other rage shenanigans. You know, just stack more rage from the Berserking cluster over here. And another nice thing about this is you're going to be losing rage all the time. Simultaneously losing and gaining rage. A lot of builds, and one of the reasons Rite of Ruin can be painful at times, is when you stop losing rage when you start gaining rage. This build, or any build that is leaning this heavily into it, is going to be doing both at the same time. So if you go the full max rage setup, you even could pick up one of the new heist bases, which has 20 max rage. You're looking at 10 here, let's say very basic. You have 10 here, 20 on the heist base. That's max of 90 when added to the base of 50. And you can get more, a couple other sources of it, up to 100, maybe 110, something like that. That's going to be a lot of attack damage, attack speed, and movement speed, depending on where you're at. You're obviously going to have an average of somewhere in the middle of your max and 0 rage. So it's not going to be straight up 300 something attack damage, 150 attack speed, and whatever else. But it is going to be really good. And then from there, you could just pick up Aspect of Carnage as well. Or another possibility is that you use Ambush instead. Ambush says you can use this with any melee weapon. You can use this with any weapon, actually. But it will empower an attack with, exert, I should say, an attack with any melee weapon. Buff is removed to exert the next melee attack you perform. Exerted attacks have plus, as in base, 25% to critical strike chance, and 138% to critical strike multiplier. Rage Storm will either crit or not crit, as Rage Vortex does, presumably. So what that means is if you can get a 100% chance to crit, the whole thing will crit. You'll use Ambush, you'll use Rage Storm, and be critting for 20-something seconds if you're really invested into it. Again, it's going to be some variable degree of duration, but you can get it to like 20 seconds, depending on your setup. So, that's another option. However, Ambush says attacks exerted by this skill cannot be exerted by other skills. So you can't use both Ambush and Intimidating Cry, which is unfortunate, but a balancing agent, I suppose. However, Warbringer, the exertion here is not a skill. So that's great, because you can still get the 50% damage multiplier here. Then to wrap up that thought and the video as well, I guess I should go back here for a better look at this. Akoya's Gaze is being integrated into the core unique pool, along with all of the other Trial of the Ancestors uniques. So if you grab one of these, you can get Life Leech from exerted attacks is instant. And it's a very fast rate. So rate of attack, that is, on the Rage Storm. So potentially very massive leech from that instantly. Like 100% of your leech is happening instantly. And it's happening at a fast rate, so there shouldn't be any major like leech instance cap concerns or anything like that. You should really be quickly topping off to full with this effect. Downside is non-exerted attacks deal no damage, but you don't need them to, because your main attack is always going to be exerted. However, that does compete with Echoes of Creation, which has skills deal 10 to 15% more damage for each Warcry exerting them. Now, that's not necessarily the best skill for it, because you're not going to be stacking that many exertions. I think there's only one other skill that can exert an AoE non-slam, non-strike skill, and that would be Rallying Cry, if that's what it's called. The one that gives you more damage per minion or ally nearby. I always think minions because I'm in solo Self-Found. So if you want to stack that as well, then Echoes of Creation could be something to go for. But who knows, maybe you just don't need the damage in the end anyways. Regardless, that's about it for me. Took up more time than I expected to get through all the skill gems, but hope you enjoyed the kind of mini theory crafting here towards the end. And I'll leave a timestamp down below to skip to this if you're not interested in the gems. Anyways, thanks for watching if you have so far, and I'll see you next time. Peace. Oh, and let me know down in the comments, as usual, if any of these skills interest you or bring out any of your creative ideas. I'm very interested to hear them because I love hearing all the theory crafts people have.